Hi everyone. Today I had a quick chat with a good friend of mine, a guy called Tim Sutton, who runs Tim Sutton Sports Massage. You can find him at timsuttonsportsmassage.co.uk, funnily enough. I've known Tim for about 10, 15 years now. He's a fantastic, prolific runner, organises a lot of local runs throughout the Kent area, worked with UK Athletics, Runners World, and obviously he runs a sports massage practice. I was really interested to find out about flexibility, hips, the best stretches, footwear. I was interested in a whole gamut of things. And so Tim was able to spare me about, 35, 40 minutes of his time to run through stuff. And this is where we ended up with this little chat. You can subscribe to on iTunes or Spotify. Hope you enjoy it. Any questions, once again, just let me know and we'll follow up. Take care. Hope you enjoy the chat. Bye. Hi Tim, how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, fine, thank you, Toby. Thanks for inviting me.
No, it's great to have you on the podcast. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah,
I've got quite old, so you've probably got some words of advice that could really help me.
we're all getting older, so that's part of life, isn't it? And again, it's part of what I can talk about as well.
Yeah. So Tim is Tim Sutton, and he owns and runs Tim Sutton Sports Massage, based down on the Kent coast. Tim is also a considerable runner. He's been running the practice for a good few years now, and also obviously running for a good few years. So that's why he's on the podcast, because he's got the dual purpose of being an athlete and also taking care of the body from a professional point of view as well. Okay, so Tim, just for people listening, can you just tell us a little bit about your practice, a bit about your background?
Yeah, well, my background is in running. I've been running for about 40 years. I got up to a sort of distance running, so marathons, and that was as far as I went. At my best, I managed to run for Kent, and I've got a few county medals, which we'll probably see on the wall there.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's my background in the sport, and I continue to run now. I don't race anymore. I've got a dog, and we go out running in the mornings and just keep fit and healthy, really. Then I started my business, Tim Sutton Sports Massage, about 15 years ago. And it's just gone from strength to strength, really. So, so it's the sports massage side of things that I've started out with. Interest has grown a little bit further. I'm taking that on to other things. I'm currently studying various different aspects of becoming fitter, really, and stronger. So I'm undergoing level 1 of my barefoot training. Barefoot training, yeah. I now run with minimal running shoes and are barefooted as often as possible. I'm doing another online training course at the moment, which is Slings in Motion. It's a combination of Pilates and yoga, and that helps with lengthening the tissues. And yeah, it's all very interesting. So my practice and my knowledge is growing all the time. So I'm quite happy to share what I can. It won't necessarily be full of technical stuff, because most of my clients don't understand the technical stuff. So I just put it in layman's terms, really, and try to get the answers that people ask me across the best I can.
How long have you been running barefoot now?
4 years. So I've got Vivo barefoot running shoes, which are 2 or 3 millimeters thick. They're completely flat. They're wide fitting at the front, and I feel much better in barefoot shoes than I did ever in running shoes, I realise now. Some of that's, I think, because I've got older. Yeah. You get more aches and pains as you get older. Yeah. But that understanding things from an evolution point of view and how we should live, we should be living as hunter-gatherers, really. But the fact that some of us have chosen to start doing sports like karate and running, I mean, running's a very natural thing to do, but actually we're probably not designed to run marathon distance. So even as a runner, there's damage that you can do to yourself. We're all guilty of overuse, and runners are very guilty of that. So I've learned by my mistakes. I've never had any horrendous injuries or anything, but my idea now is to look after myself and others so I can keep running well for a lot longer.
So, yeah, I seem to remember there being a story in the 70s of the Nike coming out with a trainer shoe which had the fat heel, and
That's right.
Great at the time, but actually in practicality, not so clever. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but.
Well, basically, the idea of the cushioned running shoe was for office workers that wanted to get fit, because they were so used to wearing rigid, inflexible shoes, their feet wouldn't move properly. So Nike invented the cushioned running shoe with a toe lift and a raised heel to actually enable them to run without too much injury. So it's had its place, but now we realise that's not the thing to do. And rigid shoes aren't good for our feet. They make them inflexible, and that makes it difficult for us to move. So if we can improve the flexibility of our feet, that has a knock-on effect up into our hips and our lower back. So not only are we're talking about the hips and the flexibility of the hips today, you've actually got to pull in other structures around that lead on to the hips and look at the body as a whole rather than an individual scenario.
That's something I learned recently to my cost, I think, because I've got I wouldn't say deficiency, but tight muscles, particularly around my right hip. And that seems to pull everything else out of place. So I have to do stretches and whatnot and exercises that involve my whole body, not just the hip.
Yeah, and that's the key. That's the thing that I've learned over the years. I mean, I used to stretch as best I could and did the stretches and do a stretch for a calf muscle or a hamstring or something like that. But you realise, as my knowledge has grown, that the body is all connected to everything else. Yeah. You can stretch the individual muscle, but we've got something in the body called fascia, and fascia surrounds in every muscle fibre, every organ in the body, and is one sheet of material. So if we were to hold up your fascia, we'd still recognise you as Toby. Yeah. So it's interesting. We just strip that away from the body. We still recognise you as you, and yet there's a lot more to that fascia than people have ever realised. And it's only just probably been the last 15, 20 years that's really coming into kind of like more mainstream type stuff, which is where some of my training's been going. There's a chap in America called Tom Myers who runs anatomy trains, and he's broken everything down into 12 myofascial meridians. So when you're running, you're using these different meridians in different ways, but they're all interlinked and interconnecting. So he's broken it down into a system, and then Cameron Gertner from the Art of Motion had broken that down into the movement patterns that we do for every day. Mm-hmm. So that's where the yoga and the Pilates comes in. She's broken it down into when we run or we walk, there's a certain movement pattern that we need, and that's where really all of us have got to start in some respects, is getting ourselves walking properly, and then everything else can lead on to that. So once you look after the everyday, you can run better, you can do karate better, you can play football better. But if your everyday is not in the best place it can be, then you're going to struggle in what your hobbies or sport can be after that.
That's right. So that fella's name is Tom Myers.
Tom Myers from Anatomy Trains.
Okay. And so it's about getting that core basic movement, right? And then you can build onto that.
It is really, that's it. If we can get things sequenced as we are designed to move, we're, like I said before, we're basically hunter-gatherers. Mm-hmm. We're designed to keep moving all day long and not sit down in chairs and drive cars. But that's what we're evolving to become. But we're not there yet. So that's why a lot of us end up with stiff hips and lower back trouble, is because our jobs indicate the fact that we can't have to sit down for long periods of time. So when you sit down for a long period of time, your muscles become tight and tense and stiff. And then when you go to do the exercise or the sport, you can pull a muscle because you're not in optimal position to start with. So it's not necessarily the sport that's injuring us, it's our sedentary everyday lives that are injuring us in some respects, so they don't necessarily feel it till you go and do your sport. And then you think, oh, crikey, I've done it playing football, or I've done it with that karate kick. That might have brought the problem out, but that's not necessarily where the problem always arises. So we've got to look at our everyday to enable us to do our sport and the activities we enjoy.
Because we're made to be doing those activities, aren't we?
We are made to be doing those activities, yeah, and that's it. When we start taking that away from ourselves is when we get stiffer and achy. And the thing is, it doesn't just happen overnight. It takes years to establish itself. So basically, anybody under the age of 35, if they're of a reasonable health and fitness, they're not going to notice too much in the lines of stiffness and whatnot, because their bodies are young enough to cope with it. It's once you hit 35 and beyond, your body starts to dry out a little bit more and becomes less inflexible. So as we get older, we need to do more of the stretching, the lengthening, the flexibility work, enable us to do what we enjoy. So when you're young, you can do what you enjoy and do less of the flexibility work. But really, if you can learn it when you're young and learn to perform it well when you're young, you shouldn't stiffen up quite so much when you get older.
Right, I think you've answered like 3 of my questions.
Yeah,
because you mentioned stiff hips, and for me, being older and doing karate, obviously the core movements, everything revolves around the hips and the core and the movement. And my question was how to avoid stiff hips, and from what I'm getting from you is just to keep moving and have a regular stretching routine.
It is really. I mean, I try not to sit down for more than 30 minutes without getting up and moving. Now, I know that's not practical for everybody, but I mean, at any opportunity we can get up and move, we should move. Any point you start to sit there in the chair and you think, oh, my shoulders are achy or something like that, that's your body's way of telling you to get up and move. So you might be sitting down watching the most gripping movie in the evening, but if your body's telling you to move, press pause and get up and move around and come back and watch it later. Your body will thank you in the end.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, your body's communicating. You tell you, oh, get up, get moving, let's go, get going around.
It is really. And I think one of the activities like karate is you're probably very body orientated anyway, and thinking about how it reacts and listening to it. So I mean that's one of those good activities, sports that are out there really, because you are conscious of your own bodies. Whereas perhaps if you're playing something like rugby, it's about hitting the opposition as hard as you can and winning the ball and scoring tries.
Yeah. That is true with something like martial arts, because you are so connected with your body. You have to work so much to get everything into the right place all the time that naturally you are quite connected with your body and you feel your body more.
Yeah, and with things like martial arts, there will be that connection with the body as it would have been designed, evolved to have achieved. I mean, it's not something I ever fancy particularly doing, but yeah, those kicks, those arm movements, they're all movements that are individual. It's not ever so repetitive.
No. Well, no, yeah. It sounds like it is 100% right. But my other question was that let's start with somebody well, actually, there's 2 sides to this. There's people that just begin the martial arts, and there's people that are doing the martial arts. So if you're beginning a martial art and you're under 35, it sounds very much like you should just do the warm-ups, do a bit of stretching outside classes, and you'll be fine
I think so. I mean, I don't want to put anybody off that's starting out in martial arts, because if I go and say you need to do this, you need to do that, they'll be saying, oh, I don't want to do that, so I won't bother. So let them begin, let them enjoy it, on the understanding that they do need to stretch and they do need to warm up properly, but that's something they can learn as time goes on. Unless you're really, really young, you're not going to suddenly be able to do the best kick in the world. You've got to learn how to do it. So it's having an understanding, but I don't want to spoil people's enjoyment either. I mean, I get loads of people running different marathons at different times, and they come in here barely able to run 2 miles, and I know that they've got to run a marathon in 3 months' time. I don't say we can't start like this. We work at it and working through it. And in all the years I've been treating runners for the marathon, everybody's actually got round and finished the race. So what I'm going to suggest does seem to work.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. So, but if you're older than 35 and you're coming into martial arts, you really have to work harder.
Perhaps you're going to have to be a little bit more conscious about the flexibility and listening to your body. So the first time you go to do martial arts session, you're going to be stiff and achy the following morning because you've not done it before. You've got to let that stiff and achiness kind of settle down a little bit before you go back and do another session. And it's just about learning to listen to your body, really. But at the same time, go and do what you're asked to do, and kind of, if your body's not happy with it, back away. The nice thing with something like martial arts, I think the instructors will be aware of that. They might be encouraging you, but they won't be pushing you to do more, or they shouldn't be pushing you to do more than you want to do.
No, that makes sense, as long as you're listening to your body. Yeah. So you're like a grizzled old campaigner, like me.
Yeah.
What daily routines, daily stretching routines, what sort of hints and tips?
Well, I suppose I'm trying to work on the fact that when I wake up in the morning, I listen to my body, see how it feels like. If it's not feeling great and it wants to walk the dog, it goes for a walk with the dog. If it's feeling better, it goes for a run with the dog. I know each time I get out of bed in the morning, I'm going to take the dog out. Whether I run or walk is a decision that I make sometimes, because I can literally get out of bed. So that's another way of me really listening to my body as I've got older. And then if something does feel a bit stiff one day, I work on that part of the body. So if I get up and I've walked the dog and I get back home and think, oh, my lower back feels a bit stiff, I'll do some exercises for that. Or if I think the arms and my shoulders feel a bit stiff, I'll work on that for the day. So I don't necessarily have a plan for each day of the week. I wake up in the morning, listen to my body, and deal with each situation as it comes up. I might be working through the day and think, crikey, my knee's starting to hurt. Well, and then I'll do something that will work for my knee. But outside of that, if there's not anything too much trouble, whenever I get free time, I'm doing some form of exercise, even if it's just a calf stretch or something like that, or I might do a dynamic lunge or something like that, because I'd rather do that than sit there and do nothing.
That makes sense. So dealing with it with modern day life, and the rarest commodity in modern day life is time.
Yeah.
And so you have a limited amount of time, really limited, but you know you need to stretch. Just before you go into a meeting or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're going to do one stretch, one thing, what would you recommend?
I would go for a lunge, because if you're going into a meeting, so you've got up in the morning, you've had your breakfast, you get in your car, you drive to work, you drive to your meeting, you sit down in a chair and have your meeting. That's a lot of sitting with the body sat down. So by doing the lunging, you're actually kind of like taking the body in the other direction. So you're stretching out the front of the body that will get tight in the sitting that we do.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, there's a standard lunge that we all know, but through the art of motion, I've learned the fact that kind of like if you bring your arms into it as well, you get a dynamic lunge with bouncing movements, and that really stretches out the front of the hips and into the core, the front of the body. So
dynamic lunge, is that sort of opposite arm, opposite leg, or?
Yeah, I mean, what I do is I'm in the lunge position, and as my arms are up above my head, and as I go down into the lunge position, my arms go up. No, so I'm in the lunge position, and as I drop down, my arms go up above my head.
Yeah.
And when I come back up again, my arms drop below down to my sides again. So it's that movement, really. So, like you said, trying to replicate that movement of your arms swinging and your legs swinging as you walk. So as you walk, your arms, one leg goes forward and one arm swings forward. So it's trying to replicate that and exaggerate it a little bit so we don't tighten up too much.
That's brilliant. Okay. Yeah, so I think the other area I wanted to touch on was your recommendations on recovery, because you got tricky stuff, because we have to train regularly. Martial artists, if you don't train for a week, you might as well not train for 2 weeks. And to be honest, it's quite like all sports. You have to keep going. And
Cool.
and this comes down to like how strenuous should a warm up be, how light should a cool down be, what should you do in between sessions?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose it depends what you've been doing during the day. If you've got a fairly physical job, your body's going to be warmed up perhaps a little bit already. If you've been sat down all day long, it's going to take longer to warm up. It's going to take longer to warm up on a cold day than a warm day. So it is thinking a little bit about your situation, but I can understand what you're saying. If you're training for a particular event, that event happens on that day. If you wake up on that day and you suddenly don't feel that great, you can't think, well, I won't do it, I'll do it tomorrow. You've got to perform your best on that day. So that's where the training program and writing programs and trying to get that right beforehand to give you the rest before that particular day, so you shouldn't wake up stiff and achy. So it's like if you're running a marathon, I'd recommend people to perhaps do their last long run perhaps 3 weeks before the event, and with 10 days to go, they should almost be doing sort of minimal training really. In the last 2 or 3 days, it should just be reminding the body what it's about really. So with training for a marathon, you do give yourself quite a lot of period after your longest run to let the body recover for the event day. So all those bits and pieces have got to be factored into it as well.
Yeah, so it's very much a tailored program. So if let's say it's a pretty frenetic martial arts session, how of about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and it involved a lot of kicking, what sort of cool down routine and how long should that cool down routine last, would you suggest?
Well, I suppose something like martial arts is quite full on, so you probably could spend 20 minutes, 40 minutes on a warm up, maybe longer if you're, depending on what level of competition you're at, but probably for the average person that's just going along and to enjoy themselves, I'd have said sort of 20, 30 minutes warm up is probably going to be okay.
Yeah. Okay, 20, and then the cool down period?
Probably similar, perhaps a little bit less, but I mean, I think it's important to cool down properly and then get something inside you with a drink and something small to eat to have the recovery of that level of things as well, really. So it's like if I did a running event, I'd always have something to eat within the first 30 minutes. So once I've done a running event, a cool down might only be 10 or 15 minutes, and then perhaps have something to eat and have a stretch later in the day.
Okay, and obviously stretching out the hips, calves, legs, etc.
Yeah. I mean, again, whatever you've been working the most. I mean, when you run, you do use your arms, but they don't take the loading quite the same as your legs. So obviously, runners tend to look at their lower bodies more than their upper bodies, really, which is perhaps the wrong thing to do at times. But I can understand that. If you're doing something like martial arts, then you've got to look at the whole body because you're using the arms probably nearly as much as the legs.
Is it? And just going off on a brief tangent, you were talking about medium distance runs and people doing the marathon, which I call long distance. I call that very long distance, not just long distance. How do guys prepare themselves to run something like the marathon, or rather ladies and guys? I mean, the mental fortitude, hitting the wall, that sort of stuff.
Well, I suppose I've always said there's different ways of running a marathon, really. You can either train for the marathon and run the marathon properly, or you can do the training and struggle around the marathon. And that sounds horrible in some respects, but if you truly want to run a marathon, you probably need to build up from about 2 years beforehand. You can't go from no run into a marathon in 4 months and expect the best from yourself. You might get round, and there's lots of people that I help get round, and they're more than happy with that result. So if they're happy with it, that's fine. But from a coaching point of view and a runner's point of view that's achieved the standard that I have, you need to give it a lot more than 4 months training for running a marathon and really enjoy it comfortably.
Do you enjoy the marathon?
Yes and no. I've probably said 18, 20 miles many times that I'm never going to do this again, but within weeks I seem to have signed up to do another one. So I've enjoyed enough of them. I don't need to do any more.
Well, fair enough. So, would you say your body is adapted to doing just longer distance runs now, or do you do short and long equally fine? Or
yeah, I definitely feel that I've noticed my body I've adapted to run forwards. So my sideward movement and my perhaps coordination isn't that great.
Yeah.
If it's something like doing dancing or something like that, perhaps I haven't got the best coordination. But with all the stretching and the flexibility work I've learned to do over the last 4 or 5 years, I'm improving on that. So my ability to move is getting better, and my body's feeling better for it. So I've done enough damage to my body to understand that I couldn't keep running the level I was running at. But I also knew that if I did the right things, that I could undo some of the damage that I'd done. But again, I'm not talking serious damage. I'm just talking the stiffening up of the body, really.
so, if you mentioned that word damage, so if you're doing anything, even if you're not doing anything athletic, you're going to do damage.
Basically, yeah. If you're constantly doing the same thing, you're going to lay down extra muscle fibers, extra collagen in different areas, and that builds up and becomes thicker and tighter. So sport can keep you healthy, but it's not necessarily good for your health. Whereas you need accommodation. So I've gone from being a sportsman to somebody that keeps fit. There's a subtle difference in that. Maybe that's
How is there a difference? How?
Well, it's possible to run 100 miles a week and kind of like run a fast marathon. That's not necessarily what the body's designed to do. Whereas really, if you want to be healthy and fit, probably you're running about 9-minute miles. You're running 10, 12 miles at the most in a go and calling it really. And perhaps a lot of the time you're only running 3 or 4 miles in a day.
That's an age thing, though, isn't it? I mean, you've got young people, you want to do the best you possibly can, so you're going flat out, you're trying to beat your time, and then when you get older, you're just sort of saying, no, I enjoy the training or whatever it is, so I want to keep training. I don't want to be sitting on my backside for 3 months because of...
No, I don't see sitting on your backside for 3 months is going to be much fun. When you've got age on your side, yeah, go out there and do the sport you want to do and do it the best you can, because you're not going to be able to pick it up in your 50s and think, oh, I'll run a fast marathon then. You might run your fast marathon in your 50s, but if you'd have done it when you're 25, you'd have run it even quicker.
Yeah. Okay. So another question. So you got a sprain or a strain?
Yeah.
Okay. Now the old Budo karate way would be just turn up to lesson and keep training.
Yeah.
And I think there's a more modern sports is no, rest it, make sure you're 100%, then come back. Is there a happy medium between the two, or is it one or the other?
Well, I can understand if people are going to their martial arts class once a week, they want to turn up at the same time every week. So I can understand that. So if you've got something that's given you a bit of a niggle and you turn up to the session, just rest that part of the body and train the rest of the part of the body. It's not going to be necessarily 100% the right thing to do, but if you've sprained your ankle a little bit, you haven't necessarily got to land on that ankle. You could give that a rest that week and work on the upper body a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah, so it's just being wise with your body. It all comes down to that.
It is really. And again, if people have got training sessions they want to go to, because training's sociable as well, and I don't want people to miss out on the social aspect, go along, do the training session, but to do it to the limits that your body's asking you. So if you get halfway through the training session and something doesn't feel quite right, back off then. Don't carry on just for the sake of it, because at least you've done what you can do. And if you have done something, by keep working through it, you're only going to make it worse, and you could actually tear a muscle. That means that you will be injured. You'll be out to see somebody like myself, and then you won't be back to training the following week, or you might miss the competition that you're after.
Exactly. No, that makes sense. So going back to your barefoot running, what's the aim with that? You want to return to nature with the barefoot, and do you want to compete at that, or do you just something?
I don't want to compete anymore. I suppose once I discovered the benefits that could be had from barefoot running and the damage that running shoes have done to my feet and my legs, I thought, well, I want my next challenge. This is another running challenge. So it's my own personal running challenge, but it's taken 3 or 4 years to achieve, which I'm quite happy with. Things feel a lot better. I don't wake up in the morning and I've got tight, stiff calf muscles quite the same. So,
sorry, Karen, please.
I've been running since I was about 11 or 12, so that's 40 years. My aim now is to keep running till I'm 75 and beyond if I can. So I've given myself another 25-year training program just to keep healthy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I suppose the old fallacy, I don't know if it's a fallacy, the old fallacy would be that if you're using your training shoes and your Nike or Adidas or whatever they are, and you suddenly go barefoot, you're going to get flat feet, you're going to have fallen arches, and you're going to...
It takes time to get there. It's like any training program. You can't suddenly introduce something new and expect the body to cope with it and adapt straight away. You have to build up to it. So when I started wanting to get into barefoot running shoes, I just bought a pair and I started walking in them a little bit. I walked around indoors in them to start with, and then gradually I introduced them to walking outside a little bit, and then gradually I'd start running 100 meters in them, and then I'd pass kind of like, so I spent to start with probably 3 or 4 months adjusting to using them, and then as time went on I just can't listen to my body a little bit more. And one day I took my old running shoes out to walk the dog, and I got over the cricket field, which is a couple of 100 meters away, and I thought, these feel so uncomfortable. I came home after that and threw them away. So I listened to my body, and when it told me I didn't need my old shoes anymore, I threw them away.
So you just went with your barefoot, almost coverings, and away you go.
Yeah, that's it. And on hard surfaces, off on the countryside, you do hit the odd stone. Sometimes it hurts, but really, I've been sensible. I'm conscious. You become more conscious of the surface that you're walking and running on. And we went away for a weekend to the New Forest a couple of years ago, and I got up in the morning, went for a run, and I came back and I suddenly realised I'd gone the wrong way. But it was my feet picking up the surface that I was running on that told me I'd gone the wrong way. I knew that my feet told me I hadn't run on that surface when I'd left the accommodation. So I turned around and found the right route home again. So that was a turning point in the barefoot running, is when my feet actually started to pick up where I was. And that was quite exciting, really.
So the benefit is a barefoot is you haven't got your tight calves, you haven't got your tight hamstrings, you haven't got a sore back.
No, that's it, because a heel raiser, a 10mm heel raiser can kind of like throw your hips and your lower back out, which can cause lower back trouble. So my lower back feels better than it used to, being barefooted or in barefoot shoes. It is something that takes time to get into, and I'm not suggesting it's for everybody, but if you've got the time and the interest, then it's worth a thought. But definitely, I mean, martial arts are largely done barefooted, so they must understand they do that for a reason. Why not take that into their everyday life if they could do? I mean, if you need a pair of safety boots at work, you've got to wear the safety boots. But once you're home, you can walk around the house in bare feet. You can go down the shops and do the shopping in barefoot shoes if you wanted to. They look a little bit different to normal shoes, but I've got used to it, and I think they look quite smart.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I think that sort of brings us to an end today. I mean, I'll probably get some questions and I'll follow up in a couple of weeks. But it's been an absolute pleasure spending some time with you, Tim. Thank you very much.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and it's been a good experience. So thank you for asking me. No,
it's great to have you on the show. And you might even have persuaded me to start barefoot exercising.
Well, it's worth looking into, isn't it?
It is, Tim. All right. Thank you, mate. Take care.
Cheers, and Toby. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.